Most people think they know Mace Windu, the stoic Jedi who looks like he's perpetually judging everyone in the room. The guy who gave Anakin side-eye like it was a force power. But what if I told you the Mace you think you know is basically the movie trailer version of the real thing? All the big moments, none of the context. We've been sold the highlight reel, not the full game. Because here's the thing. Mace Windu isn't just some cranky Jedi in a purple lightsaber cosplay. He's one of the most skilled warriors in the entire galaxy. A man who can literally dance on the edge of the dark side without falling in. But the movies never show you the years of war, the impossible political knots, or the fact that he was basically the guy trying to keep the Jedi Order from eating itself alive. Instead, he just pops up to say no and decapitate bounty hunters. And that's what drives me nuts. We've had whole shows for Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, even Cassian Andor. Cassian, a guy whose biggest claim to fame before his show was delivering one great line and dying. But Mace, one of the only Jedi who ever overpowered Palpatine in a duel, he's just chilling in the background like an unpaid extra. No wonder people think he's just the galaxy's most intimidating HR rep. But here's where it gets tragic. Without his own story, Mace's reputation is built entirely on the few scenes we've seen. And those scenes mostly involve him not trusting the one guy we, the audience, know is about to become Darth Vader. So of course it looks like he's being unreasonable. We never got the years of him seeing the warning signs, the near misses, the times he probably thought, yeah, this kid is going to get us all killed. And the worst part is, Samuel L. Jackson has said for years that he'd come back. Fans have been asking for it. There's enough material to make 3 seasons and a movie. But Lucasfilm still hasn't pulled the trigger. We're left with the scraps. Comics here, an animated cameo there. And it's like trying to build a Death Star out of Lego, but you only have the instruction booklet. In this video, we're going to break down why Mace Windu is completely misunderstood, how the missing context makes him seem harsher than he really was, and why giving him his own series could change his place in Star Wars forever. We'll dig into his untold history, the battles you never saw, the impossible choices that shaped him, and the reason his story might be the most important missing chapter in the Jedi saga. So grab your lightsaber, preferably purple, and let's talk about the Mace Windu you've never met. If your only exposure to Mace Windu is the prequel trilogy, you probably think he's that stone-faced Jedi who constantly rains on Anakin's parade. But what if that's not the full picture? What if the guy we saw on screen was just a sliver of who Mace actually was? There's a reason Star Wars fans debate whether he was a hero, a hypocrite, or something in between. And it's because we've never really been given the context. We know he's a senior member of the Jedi Council, second only to Yoda in influence. We know he's one of the greatest duelists of his era, a master of Vopid, a lightsaber form so dangerous most Jedi won't even attempt it. And we know he was instrumental in some of the most decisive battles of the Clone Wars. But those details are scattered. Cameos in the Clone Wars series, glimpses in comics, side mentions in novels, never a full, uninterrupted story. It's like judging a sports player based only on their worst highlight reel. Without a dedicated focus, we never see the why behind his choices. The years of war he fought before the movies, the impossible political positions he was forced to take, the subtle conflicts he had with other Jedi. Instead, we just see him being skeptical, dismissive, and ultimately cut down. Think about it. We meet him in The Phantom Menace, and his first impression is telling Qui-Gon no. We see him again in Attack of the Clones, and he's either shutting down Anakin or decapitating Jango Fett. By Revenge of the Sith, he's accusing the Chancellor of treason and refusing to trust Anakin with critical information. No wonder people think he's just a brick wall in Jedi robes. But what if we actually had the missing chapters? The missions that proved his loyalty to the Republic, the moments where he mentored younger Jedi, the cracks in his armor when he was alone. That's the kind of story that would change everything we think we know. It's honestly kind of maddening that Mace Windu, one of the most powerful and unique Jedi in history, has been relegated to background status in live action. We've had full shows for Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, Boba Fett, and even Cassian Andor, but Mace, nothing. It's like Lucasfilm put him in the too complicated to touch bin and just walked away. And that's wild when you think about the narrative potential. We could explore the early Clone Wars through his perspective, see his moral compass get tested in real time, understand why he's so suspicious of Anakin instead of just labeling him as a hater. Without that, he's reduced to a plot device. The guy who conveniently pushes Anakin further toward Palpatine's side. There's also a sadness in realizing how much of Mace's life and legacy we've missed. This was a man who carried the weight of the Jedi Council's decisions on his shoulders, who fought through the worst war the galaxy had seen in centuries, and whose final moments were defined by betrayal. Imagine what it must have been like. Years of fighting for the Republic, watching friends and allies die on the battlefield, defending a system that was rotting from the inside, and never realizing the person behind it all was sitting across from you in the Senate. That's tragedy on a Shakespearean level, and we barely got to see it. His death is remembered as the moment Anakin crossed the line. But from Mace's perspective, it's the moment everything he fought for collapsed. The Jedi Order, the Republic, the hope for peace, gone in an instant. We never got to hear his last thoughts, his fears, or even his disbelief. In a way, Mace has been done a disservice. He's remembered for how he died, not how he lived. And for a character of his significance, that's criminal. He's not the cold, uncaring figure fandom often paints him as. He's a man who gave everything to an ideal, only to have it all ripped away. That's why a dedicated series could hit so hard. It wouldn't just redeem his image, it would give weight to a life that, in the films, is over before we even truly know him. And let's not pretend Mace isn't one of the coolest Jedi to ever exist. The man fights with a purple lightsaber, not because he found it in a thrift shop, but because it's a reflection of his mastery over both the light and a controlled sliver of the dark. That's what Vopod is, tapping into your inner darkness without letting it consume you, and turning that edge into power. In combat, he's unmatched. He defeated Jango Fett, the most feared bounty hunter of his era, in seconds. He's one of the few Jedi who could go toe-to-toe with Palpatine and actually have the upper hand. His presence alone in the Geonosis arena rallying the Jedi was enough to turn the tide of the battle. He's also a strategist, someone who could balance the needs of the Republic with the ideals of the Jedi, which is no easy feat when those two things are constantly at odds. His ability to lead without being swayed by personal feelings is exactly why he was trusted with so much authority. And Samuel L. Jackson's portrayal gave Mace this undeniable screen presence. Every time he spoke, you believed him. You felt the authority, the certainty, the weight behind his words. That's rare, and it's why fans still talk about him decades later. A Mace Windu show wouldn't just be interesting. It could be a masterclass in lightsaber combat, Jedi philosophy, and the thin line between justice and vengeance. The good news is, it's not too late. Star Wars has a history of going back and expanding on characters long after their original appearances. Darth Maul, Boba Fett, Ahsoka, all got second lives thanks to animation, books, and shows. Mace could absolutely be next. Samuel L. Jackson has said publicly that he'd return to the role, and in a universe where people survive being thrown down reactor shafts, there's room for a Mace survival story. Or, if they wanted to keep his fate the same, we could still get a prequel series set during the height of his career. We could see his early years in the Order, his rise to the Council, the missions that shaped his worldview, and the moments that made him cautious about Anakin. It's fertile ground for storytelling, with built-in connections to characters fans already love. And with shows like The Acolyte, proving audiences are open to stories set outside the Skywalker saga, a Mace Windu series could give us a whole new era to explore, one where we see the Jedi Order before it fell, through the eyes of someone who tried to hold it together. It's the kind of project that could take a character people think they know, and show them they never really did. But until that happens, Mace Windu remains one of the greatest what-ifs in Star Wars. A legendary Jedi whose story is scattered across media, never told in full, and whose legacy is judged by a handful of high-stakes moments, without the years of context behind them. The tragedy is that his reputation has been shaped by the gaps, by what we didn't see. And without filling in those blanks, casual fans will always see him as the hard-edged council member who pushed Anakin away, instead of the warrior, the leader, and the man who fought to save the galaxy. We've seen how more screen time can completely transform a character's place in Star Wars. Ahsoka went from divisive to beloved. Maul went from one-dimensional to tragic. And Mace could go from misunderstood to iconic if given the same treatment. But maybe that's the bittersweet part. In a galaxy built on legends, some remain incomplete. And that mystery keeps fans talking, imagining, filling in the details themselves. Because until his story is finally told, Mace Windu will live in that space between fact and perception. A figure caught in the shadows of Star Wars history, waiting for the day the spotlight finally finds him. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy my videos, please consider looking at my pinned comment and checking out the links for my Amazon storefront. It contains my favorite Legos, my gear in which I make videos, and comics that I read on a daily basis. I update it constantly, so please, take a moment and click on the link. On top of that, check out my second channel, Critical Analysis Hub Plus, and my third channel, Critical Analysis Hub XP. Just one click would go on a long way in supporting my channels and future in YouTube.